Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Safety Brief. I'm your host, Elizabeth, and today's episode is a big one. We're tackling a pretty alarming topic, EDR killers. And I've got two fantastic guests with me today, Rob Boles, founder and CEO of BLOKWORX, and our resident security pro, Matt Fulmer. Thank you both so much for joining us today. All
Awesome.
right.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Anytime. You're welcome every week. so So let's kick things off from the top here. There's been a lot of chatter lately about EDR killers, sometimes called the silent assassins of endpoint security. Can you break this down for us? What exactly are we talking about when we say EDR killers, and why do they have such a menacing name?
Because they have to be scary in order to make people feel that they're going to actually do something.
That's valid.
They don't do anything, though. Not to good programs. Well, actually, not to the EDR in and of itself, anyways. So it's a misnomer. EDR killer doesn't kill the EDR. It kills the ability for it to communicate. It still does everything. It just cannot report. So it's a silencer. And that's one of the first ones was actually called EDR silencer. That's all it does. It leverages, shockingly enough, Microsoft's own internal calls to add objects to prevent them for being able to communicate by using a number of different layers. And, once you silence it, and if you can't get a notification, nobody's going to react to it unless they see something happening local on the machine. By that time, you're already screwed. So it
Basically, just
basically is a
unplugging
killer.
the camera.
Almost, yeah. It's, most, I hate to say this, and I've been discussing this quite a bit with people, but MSPs in particular are not necessarily security focused. MSPs are there to handle, the technical aspects. They're there to, in many cases, handle that tier one, level of request. When you start getting a ton of events that are coming in, or you start getting, a lot of security oriented things, the tendency is there's not really that dedicated engineer that can really handle it full time. So if you go ahead and kill off any of those events that are being sent in, you now have somebody who wasn't really versed in handling that security aspect that
Already.
is not seeing events, that doesn't know how to put things together. And then it leads to a very terrible situation.
Yeah, and not to spin the conversation, but you bring up a really interesting point in that there's a herd mentality in the channel, right? You go to any event, and the conversation around the lunch table is, well, who are you using for this and who are you using for that? And there's a lot of trusting that your peers are better qualified to test and validate a platform or tool, than the MSP itself. And so you end up with this just mass of people trusting some of these applications. And Fulmer, I know we've had some conversations that are really interesting when you pull back the curtain and you look under the hood. Some of these really high profile names, they don't even have tamper protection.
Mm-mm.
So even their ability to defend against a malicious, malice sounding thing like a EDR killer is not even present. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's rather scary. And I mean, even recently, there was, an MSSP that supremely dropped the ball. I'm not going to name names, but they supremely dropped the ball. And
Thank
it's
you.
led to a very massive issue that has been out there. Now, it's been discussed very heavily on every form of social media humanly possible, but they're not going to come out and voluntarily say we screwed up. That's I mean, that's company suicide if they come out and they do that. Because your job as a security provider is to provide security. And if you
Yeah.
can't do that, it makes me think back to watching Mr. Robot. Allsafe was a cybersecurity company. They facilitated one of the largest breaches, in the world on the show, and everything went south. They never recovered. And
Mhm.
I mean, that's based on as close to real life events as you can possibly get. So these EDR silencers, these EDR killers, all it's doing is it's aiding in the facilitation of poor hygiene and poor practices.
Yeah, it definitely puts it into perspective, but it really is unsettling to hear how these are designed to take out what should be your last line of defense, so to speak. And for Rob, speaking of looking under the hood, I do want to dig into the technical side for a moment and speak on how these EDR killers actually work. I keep seeing phrases like BYOVD and
Nope.
vulnerability drivers. Can you walk us through what's really going on under the hood?
They don't use any of that. Using BYOVD is going to give you the ability to leverage a vulnerable driver to do something that you want, such as remote code execution, code injection, process hollowing, you name it. These things aren't that intelligent. These are the dumbest programs that you will ever run into. They literally can take two commands and it adds the object to basically prevent the communication. It's leveraging the firewall. It's not that hard. They use Microsoft's own command where they search and find what's actually being leveraged. And then they use Microsoft's own command and they add that to prevent it from communicating. It's very simple. Further proving why Microsoft is not a security practitioner. They never will be. In fact, we've seen it many times. Microsoft likes to think that Defender is a world-class solution. It is world-class, but it is not world-class in that sense. It's like world-class for absolute and utter failure. And I'll be candid. I've spent the last 3 days bypassing Defender with homemade code that it doesn't even recognize. It has no clue it exists. So, I mean, it's very common. In fact, the tamper protection you were talking about earlier, you can use Microsoft's own calls in the OS to unhook the tamper protection and delete, not just disable, delete those files from the machine. It's completely possible. It's been done for years.
Well, and you consider the intervals of Microsoft's polling, right? I think I read just in the last week that the intervals for Defender checking in are like 5 minutes, and you think about how much damage can incur in any environment in 5 minutes. 300 seconds if my math is accurate. I don't know if I'm mathing right today, but that's a long time to tinker around. So
now, one of the major things that you will find, and this is going to be a big change. Okay, this is going to be a giant change in the landscape. A lot of what you see relies on objects being able to access kernel level commands. Microsoft is trying to change it to where now third parties do not have access to those kernel level permissions, we should say. So filter drivers, other certain drivers will not have the level of access they have right now, basically to prevent a CrowdStrike issue all over again. Mind you, that was not a Microsoft problem at all. Microsoft is being scapegoated into having to redesign all kinds of stuff because somebody didn't know how to QA a product. Again, that's not a Microsoft problem. That's somebody else's problem that now Microsoft is having to take all of the responsibility to fix because somebody else was lazy. That's why some of these programs exist. There are vulnerabilities out there that help facilitate the ability to make this possible. Microsoft shoring up some of this is going to help greatly. But then you have to wonder, they're no longer going to have that kernel level access. What are they going to be able to do or not do at the application level? And that's where we're going to start seeing all kinds of new things that are going to be coming out, because they're going to have to get a lot more creative on how they leverage this. That's where, as you were mentioning, the vulnerable drivers are going to become even more and more crucial to them, because guess who has the most vulnerable drivers on a machine? What vendor? Anybody want to guess? Yeah.
Got me.
The same idiots that are trying to kick everybody out from being able to access the kernel level are the same ones that will still have vulnerable objects at the kernel level.
So if we're hearing you correctly, this isn't so much as solving the problem as just moving the attack surface to a different element of the machine.
The methodology is going to be a little bit different, but there is going to be a much more of a reliance on finding something that has that level of access that isn't patched already. And we know for a fact Microsoft is super slow in patching a lot of things.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty sure there's still Windows 95 crap that is not patched, and we're in 2025. So, I mean, that should tell you that if it's not classified by them as a critical thing that needs fixing, their methodology and their mindset is, let's just hope that nobody knows about this. We all know about it. I promise you. The second that it's found vulnerable, bad guys aren't going to report it and say, just letting you know, we're exploiting this, you should fix it. They're going to keep quiet, and they're going to continue exploiting it.
Hey, Fulmer, is the transition, if you will, at Microsoft on this whole adjustment or pivot, did I hear correctly? Is it going to the application layer? Is that where
they're moving everybody? They're kicking everybody out. So all the filter drivers that everybody currently leverages that are sitting there in the kernel level are going to be kicked out to application level. So nobody's going to have access. And the claim was, CrowdStrike made some fuss saying that, well, if they weren't at the kernel level, this wouldn't have happened.
Well, if they had good security, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah, again, if you had coders that weren't using ChatGPT to try and build everything, I don't know if they are. It just seems like that. It seems like they rushed it. They didn't bother to validate it. And obviously, they were not sampling their own dog food in their environment, or they would have caught this. It was too widespread to not get caught internally if you were properly testing. So now, because of that, MS is going to have to do all kinds of changes.
Yeah, but hypothetically, isn't the application layer a less reliable point of enforcement for security? I mean, you're allowing it to go deeper into the system versus where it is now down at the filter driver level. It just feels like
doesn't make sense.
It will give less access overall by the objects themselves trying to defend. Now, I know that we've already had conversations with our vendor, one of the vendors that we leverage, because the second Microsoft said this was going to happen, I reached out to them and I said, have you seen this jackassery? How's this going to impact us? Yeah. And their response was, the dev team already knew this was coming. The dev team already has it outlined. It's ready to go when Microsoft says that this needs to be changed. So they have already ensured that our preemptive security is going to still be able to be at the same level or even greater after Microsoft makes these changes.
So are they, sorry, Elizabeth,
No, you're okay. Go ahead.
We're having a live dialogue right now.
Yeah,
like,
we are.
I'm listening to this and I'm thinking to myself, like, so are they just kicking the security providers out of that level or that access, or is it going to be like the RMMs and everybody else who's functioning?
It's going to be everything is kicked out except for Microsoft. They're no longer, the comment was there will no longer be third-party access to the kernel level. So everything will have to change. RMMs that are relying on kernel level processes and the usage of built-in service accounts, those are going to have to be changed. Everything is, I mean, it's going to be almost a paradigm shift in how applications are handling Windows operating systems at this point.
Wow.
It could be really good. It could do absolutely nothing to help the threat landscape. We don't know until the bad guys start actually having to think about that. But right now, I mean, they're not shifting to that because they don't have to. And that's the thing. They're not going to start focusing on that until they are forced to focus on that. And it's not going to happen until certain versions of the Windows operating system are out there. And I'm willing to bet that it's going to either involve a very large patch that comes out for Windows 11. I seriously doubt they're going to patch Windows 10. We don't know yet. They haven't really clarified a lot of this for us. But the assumption is it'll be Windows 11, and then whatever is going forward will all have this change. And obviously, server architecture will be addressed as well.
It's a big change.
It's a massive undertaking, and it's sad that MS to even do this. This is the first time in my life I've felt bad for Microsoft. I don't like this feeling. I don't want this feeling to continue for very long. So,
what is this feeling of pity?
I don't know. I mean, I know what pity feels like. I'm pitied all the time, but still, I've never felt pity for Microsoft. It does not feel normal.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Well, we definitely got a little off topic there, but it's definitely something that makes you rethink.
Welcome to having Rob and I on the same call.
I was fully prepared for this episode to kind of go wherever it goes. So
yeah, there is no.
Totally
this is the squirrel episode. We're going to be walking along and go, "Ooh, there's a nut," and we're going to go look at that one.
Well, that's totally good because it brings up great conversations. I mean, that's huge and impactful and important. It definitely is something that makes you rethink everything, and it's going to force you to rethink and rebuild a lot of things. It's also a reminder that detection shouldn't be mistaken for true security. It really is just extra visibility, and it can be a vulnerability in itself altogether.
Well, if you look at this, you have a number of EDRs that are out there. We've discussed this before, but an EDR is only as good as the logic that's built into it, right? So a lot of these EDRs, and I hate to say it, but they lie. They claim to be using the most advanced artificial intelligence, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Explain to me, if you're using the most intelligent logic out there and the most intelligent artificial intelligence, why is it that when I build a script and the script downloads a malicious payload from a location of my choosing, where I've hosted it safely and securely, no, you can't have access to it, people, and then moves it after extracting it to another folder to detonate, why, if the EDR is so intelligent, does it pick up only when I've downloaded it, not when I've moved it to another location and detonated it? And I get a notification saying, go to this directory and delete this file. Well, I go to the directory, and I know it's not there because I moved it. That was by design. So a lot of these detections you get and the responses that are coming out of them are not accurate. Somebody's going to go there, they're going to see and say, oh, well, there's no file. We're all good. Yeah. No, you're not all good. Somebody had the precognition to understand this and to shift where that file is located, and it's still detonating. But you don't think it is. And your EDR isn't picking it up because it's not something that it can actually pick up.
Well, and you bring up a really interesting reference, if you will. We happen to run in conjunction, if that's the word, with some of the other channel EDRs. And, you're listening to you break this down. All I can hear is every time we have a partner send us an alert from, X vendor EDR saying, hey, why didn't you guys catch this? And, you or one of the members of the team goes and researches it. Oh, you mean the flag that they sent after we had already quarantined it or killed it or, and so the bypass rates that we're seeing on some of these providers out there, it's curious. I mean, the fact that like where we sit in the filter driver order, that if it gets to us, we know everything else missed it. How is that even going to be replicated in a layer 7 posture, for lack of a better term?
Honestly, I'm not sure how they're going to handle that, because the filter driver, I mean, I'm curious what Microsoft's plans are for this, but the filter drivers that everybody installs have altitude and elevation. If their altitude and elevation are no longer going to be at the same point as Microsoft's filter driver, then Microsoft's filter driver may still take priority over top of the ones that you're installing, which could lead to one of two possibilities. Your filter driver is standing down and no longer takes action, or it ends up getting into a really bad race condition where they're both fighting for control, and then you end up with a CrowdStrike situation of the computer still blue screening, but for an entirely different reason.
Yeah. I feel like it's definitely going to be a battle.
It's almost like they haven't thought this through. But then again, it's Microsoft. Why am I saying that?
I think this just ruined my day. I'm gonna have to go out. I'm going straight to the mountain bike after this. I don't even want to think about it.
I have that trend when we talk.
He's
you
our
usually
headless
talk
hackman.
after we're done. Well, this just ruined my day. You know, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be the doom and gloom guy all the time. It's just that's what I deal with all the time is the doom and gloom.
Yeah, that's why we have jobs, right? So
pretty much, yeah. I mean, if there was no doom and gloom and everybody was just unicorns and puppy farts, then the world would be a wonderful place. But we have people that think counterculture, and that's what we have to try and prevent. And this is probably the hardest thing when you are in technology. Whether you are a business owner, whether you are an employee, or you are an entity that is hired to keep that entity or that company safe, you can't think about the now. You can't think about the known. The unknown is the part of everything that can and will come back to completely bite you. And it's contrary to everything that I was told. When I first started working in IT and security, I asked about the unknown all the time. And I was told, if it's unknown, we can't handle it. We focus on the things that we know about. Okay, well, this now makes sense why McAfee had so many people that got hit with crypto wall. Because it wasn't known in their content files, so they couldn't do anything about it. The most they would do is hope that if somebody that was leveraging the program did get hit with crypto wall, they would send in that sample, and we would be able to build something for that specific sample. Now, mind you, it would take less than 5 seconds for them to go through, tweak one little aspect of the product, and you have a brand new hash that's no longer known by the AV solution, and it just starts doing everything all over again. But the unknown is where everybody should be focusing. I mean, I've said it once, I'll say it thousands of times. If your program that you are leveraging cannot stop known issues, there's a problem, okay? A bigger problem than it not being able to stop the unknown. So
I think the key word here is stop.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a huge problem, honestly, in the MSP space that people think detection, that EDR is security. And I just can't say it enough. EDR is not security. It does not secure anything. It's like saying my fire detector prevents fires from my house. It does not. It will tell me that my house is on fire after it's already burning down.
There's a better reference that you can use.
Anything.
Go look for the GIF of the security guy doing the pat down at one of the sporting events. Okay, a pat down, you're supposed to actually touch and see if there's anything on the person. Well, there's a lovely image out there of a security guard that when they're doing the pat down, he basically just takes his hands and goes and lets them in. That's what your EDR is doing. It's literally sitting there detector. And it goes, "Hey, Joe, go on in." Joe is malicious.
We'll catch up to you if you do anything later.
Go on in, Joe. Have fun. Break some stuff. We'll let them know that you're on the way in, okay? But we're not going to stop you because that's not our policy. No, our policy is basically if something malicious is trying to get into our environment, we break out the shillelagh and we go to town on it. That's how we handle it.
Well, we definitely didn't cover most of the topic today. And we also laid out a pretty serious picture here. So let's clear away the storm clouds a little bit and talk solutions for anyone joining us today. What can organizations start doing right now to protect themselves against these types of EDR killers or the other issues we spoke about today and build more resilience into their security stack?
The number one thing would be to start leveraging a preemptive security solution. I'm just going to throw that out there. That is, why we're here. That's why we
Yeah.
do what we do. That's why our customers and our partners have such wonderful things to say, because our solution, I mean, it's amazing. If I can't break it, it's pretty damn impressive. And I'm trying, like regularly, I'm trying to break the thing. I can break Microsoft, I can break CrowdStrike, SentinelOne, Sophos, Heimdall, you name it. I can't break ours. And it's
You just need
annoying.
to have a hack it stream. Just stream Matt trying to hack all day.
It's that impressive. It's because if you're leveraging artificial intelligence, it needs to be something basic on the back end, like simple machine learning.
Yeah.
Most of the machine learning that you're getting is written by the cheapest possible option in the cheapest possible country. I'm going to be honest with you.
And it only knows what it was taught.
Exactly. It's only as smart as the person that was training it. When you have something like deep learning, it's infinitely smarter. It has the ability to make the contextual connections. It has the ability, I'll give you an example, that if you have something that you write completely in Rust, okay, Rust isn't necessarily native to Windows. So Windows doesn't know necessarily how to handle it, but you can write something in Rust, you can compile it and make it into an executable that'll run on Windows.
Yeah.
It still won't necessarily pick up the executable itself, but what will it pick up? The behavioral actions that it's taking on the back end, and it'll shut them down. That's the big thing. You have to be able to be smart enough to understand and put the pieces together in order to keep things safe. If you can't do that, then you have the equivalence of the security guard saying hi to Joe. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and I'll just add, the fundamentals will always be there, your basic patching and keeping systems up to date. But we've been driving a message here forever. And how many MSPs and entities do we still come across that aren't embracing just basic segmentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've still got flat networks where everything's cohabitating, and we all know where security in the IoT is, right? So yeah.
I don't want to admit that my washing machine is connected to my Wi-Fi right now. But it is.
I will be very, very honest. Like I have multiple networks inside.
I was going to say I have segmentation though.
I have a completely separate network. I pay for multiple ISPs so that I can flat out have different devices that will never touch one another. And that's, as an organization, you need to be looking at things like that. You need to make sure that you have things that are completely segmented off. In fact, I've dealt with organizations where they went to the extent that every individual organization inside the company had its own segment. So finance could not talk to development. Development could not talk to support. They could talk to each other over their communicators. They could talk to each other over, whatever means they needed. Their data would not commingle at all. There is no cohabitation. That's great, because when you get somebody that clicks on something incorrectly in one of those groups, the risk is only that group is going to get hit.
Yeah.
So, that's a major thing. But it all starts with having your layering in place. Yeah. Do you have a proper perimeter? If you don't have a proper perimeter, or you're doing something like running a TP-Link router, that's generally bad. I'm running a TP-Link router on one of my setups because it was cheap. I'm just saying.
You get what you pay for, Matt.
You really do. But at the same time, I'm the same person that sits here going, come on, what you got? What you got? So, yeah, you have to have quality stuff in place. So we're talking like Palo Alto stuff. I mean, theoretically, you could use Fortinet if you don't want to go as super high end as the Palo Alto stuff. But you need to have quality around your perimeter. Okay, this is not an area where you try to get things as cheap as humanly possible.
No.
I was always told you get what you pay for. You can have quality, you can have cost, and you can have performance. Guess what? You're never going to draw a line in which all three of those meet together. You can have two of the three. I would rather have the quality and the performance and sacrifice the cost, especially around the perimeter and especially on the endpoints.
So you're going to pay somewhere, right? You're either going to pay in preventative, proactive structuring and engineering to be stable, reliable, and secure, or you're going to pay in downtime
and reputation.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's be honest here.
The list goes on.
Would you rather pay a little bit more upfront and deal with, your CFO being a little bit pissy with you for paying a little bit more upfront? Or would you rather get hit with ransomware and you're instantly out roughly $5 million, which is, the average ransom payment these days, combined with potentially having to reimage all the machines, all the overtime and extra money you're going to have to pay for your team to get back up and running, and then the reputational damage you're going to suffer when you have to tell people, yeah, our security posture was crap and we got popped.
You'd rather be safe than sorry. Spend a penny to save a dime.
Exactly. Spend the money up front and get the good stuff that is going to actually take care of you. There's too many times that I see people say, well, we went with this company and we thought they were really good, and then this happened. It's like, well, there's your first problem. You thought. Thinking does not help unless you took their solution, you sat down and you validated it yourself before putting it in your environment. That's all on you. You cannot trust somebody else. Okay, you can trust people, but somebody that I worked with at a former company, the initials are MP, he will never see this, told me that there's a very valid process that you have to go through. It's called trust but verify. You can trust somebody all you want. Verify it before you actually buy into it. If you know somebody is trustworthy, I do. It's because everything that you do in business, you trust and you verify. Numbers that you're being provided, cool. You trust that that the numbers being provided to you are accurate. You're not just going to blindly go in and say, well, we added 400,000 devices this month. And then when it comes back and you actually only added 40, it's a hard conversation to have. And then there's questions about, were you trying to, doctor the numbers? Were you trying to mislead shareholders? It's a terrible situation you don't want to get into. So you trust, but you verify. And that's what we do with every solution we have, and some solutions that we don't have. We verify that they are capable of doing what they say they will do. And if they aren't capable of that, we clearly document it and we provide that to our partners as, look, here's this product. They claim this. These are the actual findings from practical, valid testing. There is no guesswork. In this day and age, you cannot guess. Guessing gets you hit with ransomware. And then you have a situation where your company may cease to exist. So your livelihood's gone. All the people that worked for you, their livelihoods are now in jeopardy. They don't know what they're going to do. It's worth it to do the right thing and keep everybody safe. It's going to help you sleep at night, and it's going to help everybody else that you work with have a much better peace of mind about dealing with you when they know that you put things through their paces and that you have made an intelligent and informed decision.
Matt, we could do an entire podcast just on that.
Yeah.
That conversation, right? The intangibles that go into having a quiet environment and both sides of that equation, right? A quiet environment typically leads to the bean counter saying, well, what are we paying for? We never have issues. Like,
you're paying for that quietness.
Said, right? And
that's where, as a CISO, you should go back to them and say, would you like me to pay for something less? And then that way you can have something to do. They won't enjoy that something to do, but it is an option.
Yeah. Good times. Elizabeth, my apologies for completely untracking.
No apology needed. I was about to say, Mike left us for 1 week and we went on a full tangent. But
Our
I think,
tangents are usually pretty good, though. So
yeah, I was
I
gonna
mean,
say it was all very, it's relevant in the cybersecurity space, and that's all that matters because our goal every single week on the safety brief is to spread awareness, and that's exactly what we're doing today. So I think that wraps up today's episode. Rob, Matt, thank you so much for breaking this down with me and all the other topics that we untangled a little bit of today. And thank you everyone else for joining in. If you want more insights, don't forget to subscribe to the Safety Brief and check out our past episodes. And a quick note for our BLOKWORX partners, don't forget we do have a referral program where you can earn service credits. So if you'd like any details on that or have any questions, just shoot us an email at hello@blockworks.com.
can
Until
we
next,
can we put a like and subscribe like right down in this general? Why am I disappearing in this general area so that at the end? Oh my God, I'm disappearing. This sucks. I'm wearing the wrong colors for being on here because that way we can just be like and subscribe, like and subscribe.
I'm going to clip this and I'm going to put it all over social media just so everyone can see that and hear it. That way I don't have to put that little graphic on the side. So
I mean,
appreciate that.
you can take me doing that chicanery right
like
there
and subscribe.
and put the little like and subscribe under there. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I'll become a meme. I'm fine with that.
I will be doing that. Well, until next time, everyone, stay safe out there. And thanks again for tuning in.
Great. Thank you. Great job, Elizabeth.